Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we get into this Thursday morning, getting on with the week here as it still is quite cold. But one place is not cold is we got more wildfires out in Los Angeles. We're going to talk about that this morning. We're going to talk about those new wildfires that they have out there, as well as Trump. Trump, as you heard there at the top of the hour with CBS News, Trump threatening to withhold certain funds from Los Angeles if they don't get their water stuff in order. We're gonna talk about that and especially put it into context because again, one thing about the news, you can hear it there on CBS. You already see the differences in coverage from the media, right? With them, everything is negative. Everything about Donald Trump is negative. Everything that he does is negative. And then you talk about his false claims of this, his false claims of that. Again, you know, I mean, as someone who took journalism in college, they talk to you about objective reporting, and it's not your job to say this is a lie, that's a lie, this is a lie. Especially as we know now that almost any lie that the mainstream media says is a lie has come out to turn true, right? And all the people that got canceled, you remember during COVID and all this other stuff. So that's why they teach you in journalism school that it's not your job; it's your job to present facts, and it's up to people to decide what is truth, what is fiction, what have you. And just because what is truth turns out to be can be quite different, and especially as more facts come in. And a lot of times in the news, when you present a story, you present the facts as you know it right then, but those things change. Those things change quite a bit. So we're going to put that into context today. We're also going to talk about a new bill that the House has passed. It's going to possibly be the first bill that President Trump signs in regards and probably rightfully so. It involves immigration, one of the biggest things that Donald Trump had pushed during his campaign, and so it's fitting that his first bill will be regarding immigration, if as long as it passes the Senate. Of course, again, it's just passed the House right now, but we're going to talk about that bill itself. Also going to talk about kind of just go an overview of all of the orders that Donald Trump has signed. We've talked about a lot of them or some of them here as Trump has continued to sign a bunch of these orders. So I want to talk kind of an overview of that. And you hear again, it's just the station buys the CBS News. And at the beginning, but you can see just how biased they are there at the beginning. And they interview these people about the birthright citizenship, which we talked about at length yesterday. We talked about the constitutionality and what it actually says, what the Constitution actually says about birthright citizenship. And so you heard that one person there, even the president can't change the Constitution. Well, no, but what does the Constitution actually say? And so we covered that yesterday in quite a detail. And if you missed that or if you didn't have a chance for that, as always, you can look at our website, regulatorsproductions.com, where you can look at, see our past episodes either through podcast and you can also look at any of your favorite podcasting websites for that as well. Or you can see our past live stream. So we live stream every morning on Rumble and YouTube. And so if you want to see that, you can see our live stream on there, or you can also see all of our past live streams. So if you go to Rumble, you can see all of our past live streams. And on our live stream, we try to do it twice a day. So once early in the morning, and then one more later in the day for those who don't get up at 6 a.m. to catch it. We try to replay it for all of you guys, so you can have a chance to see that or see different segments. And so we also have different segments on there that we put on. So a lot of stuff to talk about again today as we continue on with Trump's first week in office, and it's been quite a busy week as he goes forward. And again, it's just you're already seeing the media going back to their old ways. I mean, going back to their old ways. They've never really changed. To go back, you'd have to have changed. They've never changed. But going to again, seeing that dichotomy of how they treated the Biden administration versus the Trump administration, and you would think, after the Biden administration just completely turned their backs on the media and made them look like fools, right? Made the media push this idea that Biden was still vigorous and he's still mentally capable and he was still could do all of these things um, and then we started seeing the videos of him having a hard time walking, having a hard time talking, and then the White House saying, "Oh, it's deep fake, not real." And then the media is like, "Yeah, that's deep fake, that's not real." And then they end up having to drop out because he can no longer do it. I mean, if the media had any kind of credibility to begin with, which they had very little, it has been completely erased. The Biden administration completely erased all media, any kind of trust that people had in the media as their lives were very very much exposed, and they kind of turned on Biden in the very end, but it was too little, too late. Especially now that we've his these overreaching pardons, which we've also talked about at length. All of these things is just it's just uh, they can't they don't know what to do with themselves, and then it goes back to Donald Trump and they're immediately back on the he's lying, he's bad, he doesn't know what he's doing. This is the Third Reich or the Fourth Reich, I guess, going back to that same old rhetoric they had before, like they never had learned in the first place. Again, just the facts, man. Especially like these like I said, these little CBS snippets, right? That is supposed to be straight up objective news, and that is nowhere near objective. They still have to put their little spin on it. So, okay, we're going to take our first break right here. When we get back, we're going to first talk about these new wildfires that are going on in Los Angeles and Trump's response to Los Angeles, and as he has promised to make a trip out there. So, if you want to call in anytime, number 601 879 0002. But keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we continue on. And the one thing, so we've covered the fires at length here on the show as things continue to, uh, have the fires themselves have been absolutely devastating. But what's been even probably worse is the handling of the fires at California, from the lack of preparedness from their local government. So we've covered here on the show Karen Bass, the Los Angeles mayor, and how she at the beginning just decided, not to show up for a day or two. As she went to go see went to Ghana to see the president of Ghana get inaugurated, which is crazy. So she was literally in Africa and decided not to come home early, decided to take her time coming home while her city burned. And of course, we learned about the policies that she had of taking money away from the fire department and, putting it towards certain social causes that had nothing to do with people's safety. And so again, as I've said before, the government is not responsible for, um, disasters happen. They're going to happen no matter how good your government is, because we can't stop disasters. Or natural disasters, as powerful as we think we are. But the extent of the damage, how you respond to the disaster, is something that we can do. But now there is yet another fire as firefighters fought to maintain the upper hand on a huge and rapidly moving wildfire that swept through rugged mountains north of Los Angeles and resulted in more than 50,000 people being put under evacuation orders or warnings. Sorry, my microphone's kind of messing up here. The Hughes fire broke out late Wednesday morning and in less than a day had charred nearly 16 square miles of trees and brush near Castic Lake, a popular recreation area about 40 miles from the devastating Eaton and Palisades fires that are still burning for a third week. Though the region was under a red flag warning for critical fire risk, winds were not as fast as they had been when the fires broke out, allowing the firefighting aircraft to dump tens of thousands of gallons of fire retardant on the latest blaze. By yesterday night, last night, I guess, yesterday night. Is that a thing? I think it's last night is the proper way, not yesterday night. About 14% of the Hughes fire had been contained, which is actually, a little bit faster than normal. Like I said, because those winds hadn't been as bad. Usually in one day they're looking at single-digit percentages, but still only 14%. Los Angeles County Fire Chief Anthony Maroney said Wednesday evening, quote, "The situation that we're in today is very different from the situation we were in 16 days ago." Mainly because, when the first fires started, we had the Santa Ana winds that were picking up that caused great devastation, and really, really made it hard to fight those fires. Plus, it being in a very populated area. Red flag warnings were extended through 10 a.m. Friday in LA and Ventura counties as officials remain concerned that the Palisades and Eaton fires could break their containment lines as firefighters continue watching for hotspots. An evacuation warning was issued for Sherman Oaks, where there is approximately 10 acres of brush fire burning on the Sepulveda Pass near the I-405 freeway. More than 31,000 people have been ordered to evacuate from the Hughes fire, and another 23,000 are under evacuation warnings, according to LA County Sheriff Robert Luna. Parts of Interstate 5 near the Hughes fire had reopened Wednesday evening. A 30-mile stretch of the major north-south artery had been closed for emergency vehicles only, to move equipment and to prevent accidents due to smoke billowing across it. Maroney said that because winds were not as strong as they were 2 weeks ago, aircraft crews were able to drop the fire retardant on the south side of the fire where the flames were moving. Winds in the area were gusting at 42 miles per hour in the afternoon. It's kind of crazy how much wind is down in that area, and had reached as high as 65 miles per hour in certain mountain pockets. To the south, Los Angeles officials began to prepare for potential rain, even as some residents were allowed to return to their charred Pacific Palisades and Altadena areas. Gusty weather was expected to last through Thursday and precipitation possible starting Saturday. Supervisor Catherine Barger said on a Wednesday news conference, quote, rains are in the forecast and the threat of mud and debris flow in our fire-impacted communities is real. And so that's kind of the real danger with any of these things is devastating landslides. They've had landslides in that area already. It's an area already prone to landslides, but with the fire taking out much of the brush and any houses and all the other stuff that was holding up some of these hills, you add rain that's just gonna just completely drench these things and have free flowing water because nothing's going to be able to slow it down. Puts a real risk for some devastating mudslides to add on to the effect. But the rain itself is God's natural fire retardant will definitely be welcome news as they continue to fight. As again, the fire is still going on now for 3 weeks. In response to the rain and potential mudslides, fire crews were filling sandbags for communities while county workers installed barriers and cleared drainage pipes and basins. Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass, who we just talked about, the immeasurable Karen Bass, who's by the way, if we have a great segment on Karen Bass a few weeks ago. You should check that video out because we shared a video on there of where she first landed in Los Angeles, and you had this reporter asking her a question. He's like, "Hey, why are you just showing up now? Like, what's going on?" And she just stared at him. There was no response. It was the craziest thing. It wasn't, "Hey, I'm going to walk away from you." She just stared at this man with no answers at all. It's like she was completely frozen in time and had nothing she could say because she really couldn't. It was what she had done was completely undefensible. The fact that she just decided to chill in Africa for a couple days instead of rushing back to her own burning city. But it was just very hilarious. So we played that video for you guys I think it was last week, so you can check that out as well. But Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass warned that winds could carry ash and advised Angelenos to visit the city's website to learn how to protect themselves from toxic air during the latest Santa Ana wind event. LA County Public Health Director Barbara Ferrer cautioned that ash could contain heavy metals, arsenic, and other harmful materials. The low humidity, bone-dry vegetation, and strong winds came as firefighters continued battling the Palisades and Eaton fires, which have killed at least 28 people and destroyed more than 14,000 structures since they broke out on January 7th. Containment of the Palisades fire reached 70%, and the Eaton fire was at 95%. So slowly getting it contained. But it's, again, crazy that you think of fires that are that devastating and go on for 3 weeks and they're still raging on. And that's just from a perspective how awesome, and not necessarily in a good way, but awesome just in the amount of how nature is, and how it can just be as devastating as it is. Luna, who was the sheriff, said his office is still investigating 22 active missing person reports in both fire zones, and all of those reported missing are adults. So we've already had 28 people killed, and we have 22 active missing people. The Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms is investigating the causes of the fires, but has not released any findings. Interesting that the ATF is the one investigating the start of these fires. That doesn't necessarily mean there's any negative, criminal element to it. You're definitely gonna have criminal elements after the fire started, but this is an area that is definitely prone to wildfires. It's a place that has had wildfires before. It's dry. You have high winds. It's mountainous. It is a place that is very much prone to it. And because of that, as a government, while you may not be able to stop a wildfire, how you respond to it is of ultimate importance. And Donald Trump, because of that, has threatened to withhold federal disaster aid relief for Los Angeles unless California leaders change the state's approach on its management of water. So again, why should we give you money if you're just going to waste it or spend it on other programs that don't actually go to helping to stop fires? And their mismanagement of this has been just absolutely, it's been preposterous. I mean, it's been absolutely ridiculous how their handling of this fire has been so bad, both in the preparation for it and two, how they was responded. It's a failure on preparation and response. And again, it shows that how Democrats handle natural disasters. They've been horrible at it for a long time. I always like to point out, Hurricane Katrina. You could see the differences in Louisiana versus Mississippi. Mississippi was hit much harder than Louisiana by Hurricane Katrina. Most of it was very much leveled. But under the leadership of Haley Barbour, Mississippi came back a heck of a lot quicker than Louisiana, which was looked by Mary Landrieu at the time, a Democrat. And of course, you had good old Ray Nagin, the Chocolate City, the Chocolate City mayor, as he calls it. How they also took years and years to come back from it, compared to Mississippi, right? And you don't have a whole lot of good news stories about how Mississippi is run, but that's a great instance, especially under Haley Barbour, how you can see the huge dichotomy between two different states, one Democrat run, one Republican run, and how they could respond to a disaster. And here again is another example of Democrat leadership in a disaster. So Donald Trump actually sat with Sean Hannity. We'll see how much time we have. I may want to cover some of the other stuff in this interview that he had, but very interesting. Sean Hannity got to do this interview with Donald Trump in the White House, and they talked about these wildfires and Los Angeles, as well as FEMA itself. So I'm going to pull that up for you here. You can see it on the live stream as we play the clip from that.
But I do like that concept. It could be something else. It could be a smaller bill and a big bill. Right. But as long as we get to the right answer. Now, I will say that Los Angeles has changed everything, because a lot of money is going to be necessary for Los Angeles, and a lot of people on the other side want that to happen, and
North Carolina too.
Fast. Well, they don't care about North Carolina. The Democrats don't care about North Carolina. What they've done with FEMA is so bad. FEMA is a whole nother discussion, because all it does is complicate everything. FEMA has not done their job for the last 4 years. I had FEMA working really well. We had hurricanes in Florida. We had Alabama tornadoes. But unless you have certain types of leadership, it gets in the way. And FEMA is going to be a whole big discussion very shortly, because I'd rather see the states take care of their own problems. If they have a tornado someplace, and if they let that.
Okay, so you hear him there. First off, talking about the changes of FEMA and how Los Angeles, because I think it is interesting. FEMA has been how they handled the hurricanes in North Carolina, as you heard Sean Hannity talk there, has been absolutely abysmal. We know for a fact that they said, hey, don't give aid to people who had Donald Trump signs. So you can imagine that Donald Trump is not going to be happy with FEMA. Now, with that being said, I do believe there needs to be, it's okay to have federal funds to help out with disasters. The problem becomes in what Donald Trump points out is you can't. It's sort of like giving money to a homeless person, right? And generally, I have no problem helping out homeless people, right? But instead, I'm going to give them food. I'm not going to give them money, because if you give them money, what are they going to do with it? They're going to use it, and a lot of them are going to use it to go buy drugs, right? To get high instead of have food, right? Which is not helping them, right? In fact, you're just hurting them by giving them money. The same thing applies to federal funds. If you're going to give money, right, it's better to do it to make sure you have some guarantees on how that money is going to be used. And the Donald Trump has talked about the California, their fish conversation conservation, not conversation, not the fish conversation. We can have fish conversations, but they're talking about fish conservations, their conservation efforts in the northern part of the state, responsible for higher fire hydrants running dry in urban areas. He says the blame for Los Angeles struggles to tame some of the deadly fires lies with Gavin Newsom, um, who, of course, is, if I've talked about, the most dangerous man in America, and someone who is really looking to hurt the country to his own political gain. So, talking about someone who is extremely power hungry, doesn't get more power hungry than a good old Gavin Newsom. But uh, and so Trump said, I don't think we should give California anything until they let the water run down. And again, how they've handled it has been absolutely horrible. So on Friday, Donald Trump will visit. So that's tomorrow. He will visit Southern California, in addition to Western North Carolina, which is recovering after Hurricane Helene pummeled the area more than 3 months ago. And you can hear him there talking about the reform to FEMA, saying that is getting in the way of everything. And there does need to be some huge after they saw how they handled the hurricanes in North Carolina. We absolutely have to change FEMA, because it is how it handled that. These people suffered. They said they ran out of money. You remember that? How crazy was that? All of a sudden they ran out of money. And then by the time the Los Angeles fires happened, all of a sudden they weren't out of money. They were only out of money when it affected a Republican state. And it just, that partisanship that we're coming from. The Democrats have always said, oh, they were, Donald Trump's a danger to everybody and this and that. When in actuality, again, you look at what they've done, right? And how they've harmed people, that being an example. If you didn't agree with him, then you weren't going to get aid at all. You had to agree with him first if you had a Trump sign. And then all of a sudden they ran out of money. It's like, well, where did it go? Right? We haven't had a disaster. And then it's like, oh no, wait, just kidding. We didn't run out of money. Someone called them on it. But that's how FEMA was being run. So yeah, it absolutely needs to be completely overhauled. And I also do believe that there has to be conditions connected to any money that we give from a federal part to states, right? Because again, as a collective, as a republic, we should look out for the better good of all. That's part of what a republic is. But that doesn't mean just free reign, okay? That doesn't mean, hey, we're just going to give you money, and then you're going to use it for more of your fish conservation efforts, or your DEI programs, or your to paint rainbows on your fire trucks, instead of actually making sure there's water in your fire hydrants and your fire trucks actually run, right? That's what we really care about. But if they're not spending that money wisely, then it's just money wasted. And other developments with the new administration, Trump met Wednesday with the small contingent of House Republicans as they tried to get on a strategy for implementing tax cuts and other promises that it promised voters. It is again a moving time with as they try to get hey, what is our agenda going to be? So we're going to take our first break right here. When we get back, I want to talk about the first bill in that regard, right? As they try to figure out what the agenda, how they're going to get this agenda passed. And as I've said before, this is Republicans' time. They only have 2 years to get this done. Otherwise, there's going to be a huge blue wave in America in 2 years if they don't get it done. So we're going to talk about this first bill that looks like it could be coming up. Hopefully, the Senate passes it as we look to how we're going to get things moving these next 2 years. If you want to call in during the break, number 601-879-0002. We keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9 as we continue on. And sorry, I had a call about some of the executive orders, which we've been covering here regarding drug prices, and I was just looking up some of the orders in regards to what he took out, and this what the caller was talking about was again there's a list of, I mean, the amount of orders that Donald Trump had signed this first week is kind of crazy. There's how much, it's just crazy in a good way. I don't mean crazy in a bad way. I mean crazy in a good way, because a lot of this stuff was needed. And so there's a lot of things out there that are being twisted, that are being not reported very fairly, as I talked about in the first one. So a lot of these things, a lot of his executive orders have been just repealing orders. And so one of the ones that they have talked about is this one that he's signing orders that's going to hurt prescription costs, or it's going to make prescription costs more. And that comes from an order that Donald Trump signed in regards to, and this is what is the? I'm trying to see if I'm looking at the White House website. I'm trying to see if there's a number on this executive order, but it's an executive order that just takes out it takes out a bunch of Biden executive orders. It's kind of, as I go through it, I mean, there's literally the amount of executive orders this revokes. It's like, I mean, it's got to be 40 different executive orders that President Biden signed, which also goes to show you how many executive orders Biden was signing. It's crazy how many executive orders he was signing, because that's how many he had to repeal. But essentially, the executive order repeals several Biden directives that were making it easier to enroll in Medicaid. So essentially making it where to qualify for Medicaid, you have to meet certain criteria, which is a good thing, right? We don't want people Medicaid should be for the very most needy in our society. It is an important program, but it's one that's very easily abused. It's one that can especially be very costly to Americans, and it's a way to, it's essentially end up being socialized medicine if you continue to expand Medicaid. Medicaid should be very, very limited, and in a lot of cases, only for people who literally cannot work, and they, of course, will also have Social Security disability as well, or those that are in extreme poverty, and only until they can work themselves out of it, right? It should not be meant as a permanent fix or a permanent type of care for a lot of people. It's there for the destitute to make sure the destitute have health care, and that is important, okay? We want to make sure that, because, health care or being seen for health care is a right. It is a human right, and therefore, you have to have protections for people, but at the same time, it cannot be to a certain point that it becomes socialized medicine. So making it harder for Medicaid, which again is a good thing, and because we don't want people to abuse that system. Several different things regarding the Affordable Care Act, and there are certain things that Biden said that were supposed to be lowering drug costs, right? That's the title of his executive orders that Biden had. But what it did is essentially it's related to Medicare and Medicaid and enhancing the Affordable Care Act. But how much that affected most people is very, very limited and to almost none. And again, it's more of the title of the bill that he is, because you can title an executive order anything you want, right? I can say this is an executive order to lower drug costs, and it does exactly the opposite, but it's still an executive order on drug cost, which is exactly what that was. It is. What it was, this executive order, is that it was an executive order that directed Medicaid to look at ways to lower drug cost, right? That's what it was. It wasn't actually drug cost related. It was for Medicare to look at ways to lower drug cost. And the initiative that executive order was only in the development stage. And that's according to Stacy I don't know how to say this name, Dusset Zena, who is a health policy professor at Vanderbilt University, and said it was unclear whether that was ever implemented at all. So it doesn't really affect drug prices. And the key thing to mention in that regard is something that was started under the Trump administration, which was the $35 monthly cap on insulin. Donald Trump, in his first administration, started that process of lowering insulin costs, and then President Biden continued that effort, and that has not been changed. That has not been repealed. So again, the only thing that was repealed as far as affordable prescription medicine was a initiative, and you can't, if you're on the live stream, you can see me doing my finger quotes, but there's no actual raising of prescription cost. It was a prescription cost initiative by Medicare that was never even really implemented, according to people who even study these types of things. So again, this is those kind of things that liberals look at and try to nitpick and try to pull out and say, "Hey, look at this! Look what he's doing! He's raising drug prices." It's like, okay, this is the full story, right? That's my job here in the full story. Is I love hearing concerns from you guys, and I'm going to look into it because I got a list of executive orders right here, and we're going to run out of time today before I have a chance to go through them. But I was going to go through just the bullet points of all of them. It's been a lot. To really, like I said, look at what's going on, because again, they look for those little snippets, right, that they can throw at you, and there is no truth to it. So I appreciate the caller bringing that up so we could clear that, so we can understand where that's coming from. And if your liberal family members or your liberal friends say, "Look at Trump, look what he's doing. That Donald Trump, he's gonna raise prices for everybody." It's like, hold on. I listened to the full story. I heard what happened. They said here's the actual full story and what was done. That was for a initiative that was never implemented. So it affects absolutely no one. So there's the full story on that one for you. But speaking also on executive orders, there was a lot passed in regards to immigration, and the House yesterday gave final approval to a bill that requires the detainment of unauthorized immigrants accused of theft and violent crimes to be detained, which marks the first legislation that President Donald Trump may be able to sign with Congress, with bipartisan support. This is not going to only be a Republican bill, because obviously that just makes sense. Like, my question is, why is this bill even necessary? Because here's the thing: I think sometimes we can be past too many bills, right? Because we already have things on the books. If someone is accused of theft or violent crime, you don't have to be an illegal immigrant. You can still be detained, right? There's a whole process for that. You don't really need a law. We can detain them, see if we need to charge them with a crime, and if we don't charge them with a crime, and we decide that they are still in fact illegal, you send their butts back home, right? That's how that works. We don't need another law for that, even though I appreciate the sentiment, right? I appreciate what you're trying to do, and I appreciate that it's bipartisan. But do we actually need more laws on the books for things, where there's laws already on the books? This is sometimes what I think congressmen think they need to show that they need a job, but that's to me. But it's going to be a political win if nothing else. It's called the Laken Riley Act, which was named after the Georgia nursing student who was brutally murdered last year by a Venezuelan illegal immigrant. It is, which I think, it's really cool to have an act named after her as well. So in that regard, I really like that, that she gets memorialized in a way to say, hey, we're going to attack this, even though, like I said, the law itself may not be needed. Senator Katie Britt of Alabama said, for decades, it has been almost impossible for our government to agree on solutions for the problems at our border and with our country. She called the legislation perhaps the most significant immigration enforcement bill to be passed by Congress in nearly 3 decades. Again, Even though I really don't think you need an enforcement bill for laws that are already on the books. It's just up to the executive to, in fact, enforce it, which Donald Trump has said he will do, and he has already done, as they have racked up hundreds of arrests already. ICE has, including illegal immigrants for several different crimes. And so ICE in the first few days of the Trump administration has made 460 arrests of illegal immigrants, including those with criminal histories that include sexual assault, domestic violence, and drugs and weapons crimes. So he has already been hitting the ground running. And again, now it's up to the executive to enforce the laws we already have, even though I really do like the idea of having a Laken-Riley Act. All right, we have to take our last break right here. We'll get back. We'll do This Day in History, but keep it tuned to the full story on WYAB 103.9. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the full story on WYAB 103.9. Again, if we run out of time as I read this day in history, it does continue on the live stream and our podcast. So if you want to see that, you can always check it there. But on this day, January 23rd, 1950, Jerusalem is officially made the capital of Israel. So the Israeli Knesset declared Jerusalem its capital, despite the fact at the time that Jordan had annexed the eastern part of the city. The stalemate would persist until the Six-Day War in 1967, when Israel captured the remainder of the city. And since then, now only 4 countries have put their embassies in Jerusalem because of pressure from the Muslims in the area. But one of the big one, of course, being the United States under Donald Trump, who in 2018, in May of 2018, moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem in a move that recognizes Jerusalem's, Israel's sovereignty over the city. All right, that's all I have for you guys today. We'll see you again tomorrow, but until then, my name is Matthew Bishop, and you have heard the full story.